Hi, welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to style the part 1 of About section. Let us get started with styling About section. This is the HTML markup which we wrote for part 1 of About section. And this is its current view inside web browser. In this lecture, we are going to start applying style to About section. I will get back to the code editor. I'm going to style.css file and let us add comment for part 1 of About section inside style.css file. I'm going to add comment for part 1 of About section. Okay, we are going to write CSS for part 1 of About section under this comment. The very first thing I want to do is to create some white space for this About section. I'm going to index.html file. As you see, I have created a large content box for About section, and we can add some top and bottom padding to create some space for this box. Let us do it. I'm going to select my large content box and I'm going to write dot, and then I'm going to write the name of class for content box, which is content hyphen box hyphen lg. And I will apply CSS padding property, and I'm going to set top and bottom values, and the top and bottom values are 120 pixels and left and right with 0 pixels. As you can see, these values just created top and bottom space for this About section. Now you can see that there is top space for this About section and there is bottom space for this About section. Now I am going to start applying style to these headings, which are on the left side of About section. Let us first have a look at HTML markup for these headings. For these headings, I have this markup. I have a div with class vertical hyphen heading, and inside this div we have h5 and h2 elements. Let us first style this h5 element. I am going to select that h5 element like this way. We have a vertical heading div, and inside this vertical heading div we have h5 element. So by this way we can select this h5 element which is inside vertical hyphen heading div. The very first thing I want to set is color property for this heading, and the color for this heading is moon yellow color, and the hexa value for moon yellow color is F4C613, and now the color for this heading is moon yellow color. Next I want to set the font size for this heading, and the value for font size is 14 pixels. Now I'm going to make sure for the font weight for this heading, and the font weight for this heading should be some high value because I want this heading to be thick. So I'll set the high value which is 500, and this heading should be in uppercase letter, and for that we use CSS transform property, and the value is uppercase. If you notice, the words for this heading is too close. We can increase the space among these words by using CSS word spacing property. I'm going to write CSS word spacing property. The word spacing property increases or decreases the white spaces between words. In this case, we are going to increase the space between words for this heading. And let me set the value 30 pixel. Okay, it is too much. If I set 15 pixel, it is still too much. Okay, 9 looks fine, and we have a good looking space between the words for this heading. Nice. Okay, Next, I want this heading to take proper width and height. Right now, if you notice, it is taking too much width. You can see this blue highlight rectangular. This blue highlight is from brackets live preview. So the thing is, I want to make sure this heading gets proper width and height, and for that I'm going to set the display property as inline block. I'm going to write CSS display property, and the value for this display property is inline block. And now you see it is taking proper width as per text. If I remove this display property, now you can see that it is taking too much width. And if I put back the display property, and now you can see that it is taking proper width as per text. Next, I'm going to do a very important thing. I want this heading to be vertical. If you look at the wireframe, this heading who we are should be in vertical, and it is very simple. To make it vertical, we need to use CSS transform property. I'm going to write CSS transform property, and we want this to rotate. So we are going to use the rotate option, and the value for this rotate option is, let me use 15 degree. And now you can see that it is rotated 15 degree, and let us play with different values. And now it is rotated with 30 degree. If I set 50 degree, and now you can see that this heading is rotated 50 degree. Let us try some more values. You can see that this heading is rotated with 75 degree. And now it is rotated 90 degree. Actually, I want to rotate this heading with negative 90 degree. So by this way, the user can easily read it. Who we are. As you know, the CSS transform property allows you to translate, rotate, scale, and skew element. And it is an effect that lets an element change shape, size, and position. And we have already used a CSS transform property for home section. Let me show you. For home section we use CSS transform property, but for home section we used transform property as translate. But in case of vertical heading we use the CSS transform property as rotate. Next, let me add browser vendor prefix for this transform property. I'll select this transform property, and I'm going to edit menu, and I'm going to select auto prefix selection, and it just added browser vendor prefix for this transform property. And this browser vendor prefix is going to make sure that this transform property will work perfectly for all the WebKit based browsers. Next, I want to set its position. I'm going to write CSS position property, and the value is relative. By this way, it is positioned relative to its normal position, and now we can position it wherever we want. I want this vertical heading to be in the middle of this normal heading. So I'm going to set top value, and the value for this top dimension is 60 pixels. And I want to move it on the left side of this heading, and for that I have to set left dimension, and the value is negative 63 pixels. And now you can see that this vertical heading is on the left side of this normal heading. If I remove this rotate option, you can see that it is right here. So therefore I used negative left position. So without position it is right here, and without rotate option it is right here. If I put back the rotate option it will be here, and if I put back the position it should be here. So because of rotate option I used this negative value for left side. It is still close to normal heading, but we will figure out in a minute. Okay, I will move forward. Now I am going to style this normal heading which says a story about us. I'm going to index.html file. So this is basically h2 element. Let us apply style to this h2 element. I'm going to select vertical heading div like this way, and inside this vertical heading div we have h2 element. And now you can see that this h2 element is highlighted in live preview. The very first thing I want to do is to create left side space for this normal heading, so we can have some good gap between vertical heading and normal heading. To create left side space, I'm going to use CSS margin property, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove top, right and bottom margins like this way. I'm going to set top with 0 value, right with 0 value and bottom with 0 value, and these 3 0 values are going to remove the default margins, and I'm going to set the left margin with 35 pixels, and it just created a nice space between vertical heading and normal heading, and there is a gap of 35 pixels, and this gap is because of this left margin. Next, I want to increase the font size for this normal heading. I'm going to write CSS font size property, and the value is 42 pixels. And you can see that I just increased the font size for this normal heading. After that, I'm going to set the font weight property. Right now it is looking thick. I want this heading to be thin. So for that, I'm going to use CSS font weight property, and the value is 100. And now you can see that it has light font. Okay, one last thing I want to set for this normal heading is CSS line height property. I'm going to write CSS line height property, and the value for this line height property is 45 pixels. By this way, it is going to make sure that this normal heading gets proper line height. Perfect. If you notice, the color for this heading is gray color, and this is because we set some generic CSS for all the headings. Let me show you this one. Sorry, not for heading, I think for body element. As you can see that we have set a gray color for body element, and it is being applied for all the elements which are inside body tag. So therefore these headings are getting gray color, I mean this normal heading. Okay, now I will move towards right side of about section. On right side we have two paragraphs which almost look great. We just need to create some bottom space for this first paragraph. I am going to index.html file. For this paragraph I have created a div, and I have assigned an ID to this div, and the ID value is about-right, and inside this about right div we have two paragraphs. This is first paragraph and this is second paragraph. I want to create some bottom space for only this first paragraph. Let us do it. I'm going to select about right div like this way, hash about-right, and inside this div we have p elements, and we are going to target the first p element, and we can easily target the first p element using CSS selector, and the CSS selector is first-child. So by this selector we can easily target the first paragraph, and now I am going to set the bottom space for this first paragraph, and for bottom space I am going to use CSS margin bottom property, and I want to create 30 pixel space. And you can see that it just created a nice 30 pixel space at the bottom of first paragraph. The color of these paragraphs is already set to gray since we set body element color to be gray. So these p elements are getting gray color because of this color property, and this is automatically being applied to all the elements which are inside body element. So therefore these paragraphs are getting a gray color because of this CSS rule set. Okay, now let us give style to this bottom image. I'm going to index.html file, and this is the HTML markup for this bottom image. We have a div, and the ID value for this div is about-bottom, and inside this div we have an image tag. This image almost looks good. And if I resize my browser window, you can see that it is a responsive image and it is getting small size for small screen sizes. And it is because of this bootstrap class, which is img-responsive. And now you can see that it is getting small for small screen sizes. One important thing we need to make sure for this image is to make it always stay in the center of this web page, and we can do it using CSS. I'm going to select this image. We have a div and the ID for this div is about bottom, and inside this div we have image tag. And to make sure this image will always stay horizontal center, we use CSS auto margin. I'm going to write CSS margin property, and I'm going to set top and bottom with 0 values and left and right with auto. This is one of best CSS technique which makes sure that the element always stay in the center of web page. Perfect. Things are getting shape. I think we need to create some space at the top of this image. I'm going to select this about bottom div, and I'll just put some margin at the top of this div. I think I must use margin top, and the value for this margin top is 60 pixels, and it just created outside top space for this image. Perfect. Okay, I'm done with styling the part 1 of about section. Before I end this lecture, I have to organize my CSS little bit. I wrote CSS for content box and for vertical heading. Basically, these CSS are going to be generic CSS. So I want these CSS separate from about section. So what I'm going to do, I'll create a separate section for content box. Later on, we will add some more content boxes like medium and small, and I will move this content box CSS under this content boxes comment, and I'm going to do the same for vertical headings. I have to create a separate section for vertical heading. And I'll simply move this CSS which is for vertical heading under this vertical headings comment like this way. So by this way we can keep our CSS well organized. Later on we will add horizontal heading, so the CSS for vertical and horizontal headings will go under this comment. Okay, in this lecture we finished working for part 1 of about section. Let me write the end comment for part 1 of about section. This is the div for part 1, and I'm going to write the comment for part 1, I mean the ending comment. And I will close this about part 1 div, and I will go ahead, I'll save my project files. Okay, in next lecture I'm going to start working on part 2 of about section. I'll see you in next class. Thanks.